Anyway, it's great to have everyone here. Yeah, we're starting with the book of Job. It's Sunday school. We kind of talked about Job for a little bit and kind of talked about what people's opinions of it were. What do they think it meant? What's going on with the book of Job? And there were about, we had about 25 people in Sunday school, and there were about 24 opinions, right? That's because someone didn't talk, right? That's what goes on with the book of Job. Like, it's tough. It's weird and difficult. And one of my favorite things to describe the book of Job is that a theologian once said that Job is like reaching your hands into the beach, into the sand, and pulling it up. And the sand just drips in between your fingers. And Job is kind of like that. You know that there's something there, but it's just hard to grasp, right? It's just hard. It's hard to get through. So, and if anyone says that they have a good, firm grasp of Job, you probably shouldn't believe them. Because they may think that they do, but the more reading will show that they don't. That's just oh yeah, I really don't know what's going on here, and so that's what makes it fun. Doing a sermon series where I have to come off with an air of authority and say, hey, this is what Job's doing, right? But it's a fascinating book, and what we end up seeing in it is it raises some very interesting questions about us and God and what's going on with us. So the title of the series is called Questioning God's Wisdom, because that's the main push through Job, questioning God's wisdom. It's this fascinating tale. So to get into Job and see what's actually going on, we have to start off where Job starts, and he starts off where Job is from the land of Uz. Anyone from the land of Uz? It's like, who's from Cleveland? Yay! That's no one from Uz. Well, it's not Hebrew. So Job isn't Hebrew. Also, there's no kings mentioned. There's all these typical classic literature works that say, hey, this is when this happened, isn't there. So you could tell that the author is going, hey, read this for what it is. Okay? Read this for what it is. Don't try to put it under this envelope here. So read it for what it is. And it's mostly poetry. Okay, it's Hebrew poetry. And so we see that, and Job has unbelievable wealth. Now, some of you are like, Job, I thought his name was Job. Okay? That's fine. You can mispronounce it for the next 20 seconds. From now on, it's Job, okay? It's just Job. And but Job is incredibly wealthy. He's got 10 kids. He's got tons of servants, tons of camels, tons of donkeys, all things that we count as great wealth in today's society, right? It's like I am a man of many wells. I have 12 chickens, right? But he's extremely wealthy, but and he seems to almost be protecting that wealth. And we won't get into this week, but something that he does is his kids seem to have lavish parties. These amazing parties. And he actually, at the ends of these parties, at the ends of these feasts, Job would make sacrifices for his kids just in case they may have cursed God at some point in their drunken rage. I don't know. I didn't say that. It's church. At some point in their feasting, they cursed God at some point. So he's going ahead and cashing out insurance money, making sure the God is appeased. And then we're brought into this heavenly courtroom where God is brought up as this judge, which is kind of a typical Old Testament view of God, this judge that's keeping justice going on in the world. And the Satan, which we talked about already, Sanatas, the accuser, he goes up to God, and God's basically like, so what do you think of my pal Job, right? He's righteous and all that stuff. And Satan's like, the only reason why he's righteous is because you give him things, right? That's the only reason why. You take those things away, you take his righteousness away. And there we get the first thing with Job. And it should be a question that we all ask ourselves, because Job is like a mirror. And we're like, ooh, am I this way? Am I good because I think that's where I'm going to get blessings? You see where we're going now? Am I good because we're going to get blessings? So a lot of people, what do I do with my thing? There it is. A lot of people think that Job is about suffering. And it is about that. But I was talking to a friend last night, and she said, the first time I read Job, I got super angry at it. I got super angry. And the reason why is like she was wanting to read it to get the answer of why there's suffering in the world. Job doesn't answer that. Like a little bit, it's there, but like he doesn't really mess with it. The real question in Job is actually there's a tension in Job, and that tension is actually this. It's A or B, this tension. The tension is God is just, he operates under justice, and he punishes evil and rewards good. Or the other tension is that God's justice is bigger than the circumstances we find ourselves. And it's held in this tension between those two things the entire book. All right, the entire book. But this Job isn't the only place where we see this tension. We also see this tension in the Gospels too, specifically the story that I just read, the prodigal son. So you guys are probably pretty familiar with the prodigal son. We'll just go through it once again. It's so this guy has two sons. One son's like, hey, God, hey, father, I'm not really cool with how things are going right now. I really want you to give me the inheritance that you would give me if you were dead. So, like, in other words, you're dead to me. And, like, just go ahead and give me that. So he goes and gives that to him, and he just goes. The younger son gets his inheritance from his father and goes off into a far off country and spends it on blow and other things like that, right? Not good living, not healthy living. And all of a sudden, the economy falls out from the area. A famine comes in, and suddenly everything evaporates around him. And he finds himself, the only job he can get is to feed pigs. And he's so hungry, all he wants to do is eat the food that the pigs are eating. Now, for those of you, we got to put our biblical glasses onto here. All right, biblical glasses. We've got to look through so we can understand what the author originally meant. The biblical glasses, you have a good Jewish boy, right? This younger son. All he's allowed to eat is Hebrew nationals, right? He's allowed to eat, like that's all he's allowed to have. And yet, he's longing to eat the food that the pigs are eating? This means he is completely worthless in this Jewish society. Like he's washing away every bit of his Hebrew identity. Like it's all going away by eating, just by that one act of eating with the pigs. Nothing is worse. I mean, there's stuff that's worse, but you get the idea. Like he has gotten to the low of the low. And it finally clicks in his mind. He's like, even my father's slaves, even the slaves live better than I do. And so he gets in his mind, he's like, all right, if I go back and I get this story just right, and I can ask for my father, just make me one of your slaves. Just make me one of your slaves. And so he's going back, and he's walking down the road, and he's just playing that story over and over and over in his head. I think we've all kind of done that at some point, right? Just play that story. It's like, this is what I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to say. And then his father sees him from a long way off, and he comes running towards him, and he embraces him, and he's like, oh, it's so great to have you back. And he puts shoes on his feet, puts rings on his fingers, and gives him new clothes, and he yells out over his servants and goes, kill the fattened calf. We're having a raging party today because the son that was lost is now found. The son that was dead is now alive. Like we're going to have a huge, awesome party tonight. It's going to be amazing. And so he goes all this, and we think of the story, and we're like, oh yeah, God accepts the outcast in. Like, yeah, high five, all those things. Like we love that story. But the thing is, the story continues on. So they have this raging party going on. It's an amazing party. And then the older son comes in from the fields, because the older son's a kind of a 80 hours a week type of worker, and overworking it, trying to keep the father happy with him. And he comes in and he's like, so why is all this Why is the DJ dropping fat beats over here in the room, right? Like, why is that? Why do I smell like Brazilian barbecue and things like that, right? Like, that's, like, why do I smell all these, like, why is this raging party going on over here? What's going on? And he asked one of the servants, and the servant goes, hey, didn't you hear? Your brother's back. We thought he was alive, but we thought he was dead, but now he's alive. He's back, so your father killed the fattened calf. Now, I think we're supposed to think that the older son would be like, oh, that's cool. But no, he gets super angry, right? He gets super angry. He goes to the house, but does he go into the party? No. I picture him just outside the house, like doing that angry, like kicking rocks thing, you know, like just, it's like, I'm just so angry right now, and I can't deal with myself. And it's just, he's doing all this, and then the father comes out. And the older son is just angry. He's like, this son of yours wasted everything on prostitutes and cocaine. Like he wasted everything on it. Like that's all of your stuff, and it's gone now. It's gone. This son of yours. And you're having a huge party for him? Like you're supposed to be punishing him. Like, I've been here every day. I've woken up early and dealt with the people early morning before you wake up. I've stayed in the fields past how you have gone back to bed. I've worked tirelessly for you. I've done everything for you. I've been the best servant that I could be for you. And the father is like, yeah, you have. And everything that I have is yours. Everything that I have is yours. But your brother, he was dead, but he's alive. He was lost, but he was found. And I think that sense and that story, that sense of like that younger brother needs to be punished for doing that. I think that's the world of justice that we often exist in. That's the sense that we exist. That it's like, okay, like, yeah, I can get around that. When you do good things happen to you. It's basically karma, right? Like that's when you do good things, like things good. If you do bad things happen to you. Right? I mean, I think we very much believe this. We believe that we get what we deserve. And we think that this is how God works with us. And we say this all the time. Are you ready? Let's start quoting ourselves. If you're sinful, then you deserve to go to hell. But if you follow Jesus, you deserve to go to heaven. Right? Ooh, I'm messing with people now. It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing because I'm not a nice person. If you're mean, you deserve punishment. If you're nice, then you deserve rewards and blessings. And that translates into our faith. And I know we don't like to talk about it much, but we believe that if we just lived a better life, then God would give us what we want. Tell me if you've ever done this before. And the sad thing is I've done this more than I would like to admit. But it's like, oh man, I could really use that promotion. God, if I get that promotion, I promise I will give more to the church. God, if you heal my sister, I'll go to church more. God, like fill in the blank, right? Have you ever done that before? I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that more than once. What are we saying? God, I'll bargain with you because I know being better means I'll get more gifts. Right? Yeah, see? See? And honestly, we believe that if we pray this much, give this much, go to church this much, then that will equal God's blessings. So we spend our lives trying to figure out how much we have to do in order to get blessings from God. Or we believe that if we do all the right things, then Jesus will bless what we are doing. And if we are acting in a sinful manner, then Jesus will not bless what we are doing. This is the view of the older brother. And it's the view of people in Job's life too. His wife, all of his family died except his wife. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because she says this. Job, forget about your integrity. Curse God and die. Basically what she's saying to them, listen, Job, I know you're saying that you didn't do anything, but you did something. You did something. You just need to go ahead and curse God and die because everything you have is just ash and rubble all around him. What I think the most powerful images in Job is at the end of chapter 2. Job is sitting on ashes, scraping his boils with a piece of pottery. And that imagery is he's sitting on the ash heap of his former wealth. Like that's such a powerful imagery. And his wife is telling him, curse God and die. You deserve to die because of all of this. And this is what my concern, and this is why I'm preaching on this today. That I worry that when we face times of plenty and when we face times of nothing and suffering, that we immediately run and we make ourselves like the older brother, we make ourselves like Job. That in that we're like the older brother and the prodigal son, that we've done all the right things. I've believed the right things, done the right things, sacrificed the right things, proclaimed to be upright and righteous. And that somehow we deserve to get blessings from God. And in doing so, when we act like that, we are more interested in what God is giving us rather than having God himself. There's a famous Presbyterian theologian by the name of, I know Presbyterian, it's all right, it's a Lutheran church. But it's a famous Presbyterian theologian by the name of Tim Keller. And he says, talking about the prodigal son story, he says, are we more interested in getting the things from the Father than having the Father himself? Are we like the older brother who said that the party for that wayward son, the party should have been for me because I was the one that was righteous. I was the one that was good. And he wants what the Father can give him, but he could care less about the Father. See, the younger son and the older son, they have the same things. The younger son was just honest about it. He goes, Father, I don't want anything to do with you. I want to go way over here. The older son goes, I'm going to get it by being the righteous one there. I'm going to get all the stuff that I have from God. Because where was the older son when he was complaining to the father? He was outside the party, right? He could have walked in the party. They were having Brazilian barbecue in there. That stuff's tasty. And he's like, no, I'm going to stand outside of it out of principle. But him standing up for his principles, he was standing up for his own pride only. Right? He could have gone into the party because that is where God was. And I think we see a shade of this when Job says at the end of chapter 1, Job says, and it's the part that's not in blue, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Now, I'm going to say something weird here, okay? If I haven't said anything yet that's weird. A lot of times we look at this is the main verse in Job. Like, this is what it's all about. I don't think the character of Job, would not have said this at the end of the book. In the next 5 weeks, I'm going to show you why I think that. I don't think he's going to say this at the end of the book. And this is why I kind of think that. Because it's not about what God is giving us or taking away from us. And here's the point. Because this is what we see in Jesus. That he has given himself for you and me. He died on the cross that we might always be with God. Jesus rose on the third day that we would know that nothing could separate us from the Lord our God. And on the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit came through our baptisms, we know that God is with us always, right? He's always with us. He's always going to be with us. And the story is basically this, that in times of want or in the times times of plenty, that if you are on the straight and narrow path or you are off the path completely, that if you are pridefully righteous or you are struggling in doubt, that you are faithful or you are faithless, that you are a saint or a sinner, that if you work too much or you can't seem to get off the couch, that if you've had too many kids or you can't seem to have enough, that if you have so much money in the bank or you have the debt of the U.S. government, that everything you have, if everything that you have is taken away from you, that God is still there with you in the midst of the mess and the suffering. And this is my prayer for all of you. That whether you are suffering or in prosperity today, or tomorrow, or in a week, that you wouldn't see where you are, your current state, as a reflection of how God sees you. That you wouldn't start judging others, saying that they are terrible because they are poor, or they're terrible because they are rich. But we would see people like God sees them. That we would not see their state as a reward or punishment, but rather we would see that God is with you in the midst of the good times and in the bad times of suffering. That He will never leave you or forsake you. And He's done everything to save you. That's what I think Job is about. That it's not about the acclamation of blessings, but it's about knowing that God's justice is here and it's working for us even in the midst of our suffering. And that's really good news, and that's what we're going to dig into in the next 5 weeks. We're going to see that more and more, deeper and deeper. And it's really cool. And we'll end right there.